if you want to make a comic, you should do it, and you should not wait for people to tell you or give you permission. You should not like think that you need to achieve some kind of thing before you start doing it, that you need to be the world's best artist or like be the world's best storyteller. Everybody starts somewhere. And unless you never start, in which case your comic never exists. And like, that's sad. So don't be sad.
That is,
Just like get it out there and get it done.
Hey, comic creators, artists, writers, world builders, this is your call to action. Here at Talking Comics, we love diving into the stories behind the stories. Whether you're just starting out or you've been in the game for years, we want to hear your journey, your creative process, and what fuels your imagination. So, ready to talk comics with us? Message us or hit the link in our bio and be a guest on Talking Comics.
welcome to Talking Comics. We have Benjamin Hunting with us this week. Before we jump into your comic, which I know we're excited about, well, actually multiple comics, tell us a little bit about yourself.
What do you want to know?
Anything, like
Hit me with a specific.
All right, where'd you grow up? Where are you from?
I grew up in a small town in southeastern Quebec.
Okay, awesome. What got you into comics?
So when I was a kid, I really liked weekend comics. I know in the States it's on Sunday mornings. In Canada it's Saturday mornings. So I read a lot of like Charles Schultz and Berkeley Breathed and G.B. Trudeau and guys like that, Bill Watterson, Gary Larson. But I never really got into comics until like I guess what you would call comic books until much later in life, like in my early 30s. For whatever reason, once I became a teenager, I never made that transition to comic books, superheroes, that kind of thing. Just never happened. And because I was in a small town, and especially in a part of the world where English is uncommon, there weren't any comic book stores. So I didn't know that independent comics existed, like as a thing. It just was this whole world of storytelling that was completely locked off to me. And then I was like 30 or 31, and I had moved to a neighborhood in Montreal where a new comic book shop had opened maybe a couple of blocks away. And I walked in one night, and I eventually ended up making friends with the owners, and they introduced me to this whole universe of comics that like I had no idea was out there. So that's kind of what got me back into it. I think the first book that really drew me in was Fun Home by Alison Bechdel. So that was just mind blowing that some people were telling stories like that, and it was it was something that I couldn't find in other types of media. Like the stories that I was seeing in independent comics, I didn't see them on TV. I wasn't seeing them on film, you know. And I really enjoyed film, still do, but it was just like this completely different thing, and that also helped to pull me in.
That's awesome. So what made you start writing comics?
Well, I mean, I'm a pro writer in my day job, so I've been a freelance writer, mostly automotive and like culture and tech for about 17 years. So it's something I've done my whole life in a lot of ways. But I had some story ideas that I realized would really benefit from a visual medium. And what I like about comics is you have an unlimited budget in terms of effects and location and how long it can be and all that stuff. So you can pretty much do whatever you want on the page. But it's also what I was saying before about telling stories that you don't normally see. It's a venue where you can do that and people are open to it. And there's a lot less gatekeeping depending on how you do it than you would have in, say, television or film or whatever. So you're able to, I think, tell more personal stories that are not often found elsewhere. So that really drew me to it as well. So that's what pulled me towards comics as a medium. Like I had basically spent, I don't know, a good 8 or 9 years just devouring comics and becoming acquainted with it before I realized that I wanted to do it myself.
It's pretty cool. So when you sit down to write, obviously you're a pro writer, so this is probably like old habits at this point. But do you have any like specific rituals or habits you have to do when you sit down to write?
No, I mean, this sounds weird, but for the pro stuff, it's a machine that I turn on and off. It's just a muscle. Writing is a muscle that gets better the more you do it. And I was lucky early in my career to have like outlets where I could write tens of thousands of words that very few people were going to see. and it lets you get that out of your system and kind of discover what works for you and what doesn't. But the interesting thing with comic book writing and any fiction writing, in my experience, is it's radically different. The discipline is the same. Like, I find that for me, the most effective thing I can do as a writer is to actually do it. And by that I mean you pick a specific time and you do it for a certain amount of time and you don't get concerned about the results. Like, you could try saying I'm going to write for an hour, you could try saying, I'm going to write a page, and then that's enough. That's good. And you just get it out and you actually hit your goal. And then you can move on. You can go back to, like, scrolling Instagram or watching TV, whatever it is you really wanted to be doing. But if you do that every day, eventually a body of work accumulates and you can go back and you can improve it. If you don't ever do it, nothing ever happens. So, like, that's the thing that works the best for me. And it's tough. Like, writing is obviously something I do almost every day for work. Um, and that means that I don't always feel like shifting gears and doing more writing when that's done. So, like, I had to sort of trick my brain to get things done sometimes where I would just carve out an hour in the middle of the day. Like, I would do client work in the morning and then, like, an hour before lunch or an hour after lunch and then go back to client work, because you never you'll never find the time to do anything. You always have to make the time to do stuff, right? So,
Right.
like, carving that out and making it a hard limit, we're like, okay, drop what you're doing and now you're going to write like a page of comics, and you can hate that page, it's okay, you just have to get it done, and then you can make it better later.
It's very true. It's like anything, this podcast, episode one's way different than episode whatever this is going to be 54,
Yeah,
55, 56, something like that.
for sure.
It's
You can
crazy.
even see that, like, in the comics work that I've done, like Code 45, first book I wrote, co-created with Joe Ing and Angela Hodge. It's like if you read issue 1 and then you read issue 5, the mechanics of the book are different. Like, I became more comfortable, better able to express myself, understood the tools of what you can put on the page better, and I think you can see that evolution throughout the series.
So speaking of that, what is it like working with artists? How'd you find your artists? Like, how did that come about?
I mean, the coolest part of comic books is collaborating, because you make something that's ultimately better than what you could have done by yourself. For my first 2 projects, Code 45 and Dead Air, I was lucky in the sense that a friend of mine I've known since I was 11 or 12 years old, Angela Hodge, she's a designer, has worked on some children's books, designs products, etc. And her partner, Joe Ing, I've known him almost 20 years now. He's a pro comic book artist. He'd done a lot of stuff like G.I. Joe, Transformers, Street Fighter, a lot of books for Udon. And I went to them when I had my initial idea and I said, "Hey, do you know anyone who would be open to collaborating with me? Like, who should I reach out to and work on these books with?" And it turns out they were interested.
There you
Basically,
go.
for Code 45, I got to go to comic book college with Joe for like 5 issues where he taught me everything I needed to know about making comics. And it was a really great experience and really invaluable, because just because I'm a writer doesn't mean I understand a completely different set of, a new language, new idioms, new workflows. So that was really, I can't stress enough how helpful that was for me. And on my current project, Model UN, it was really different because it's a completely different style of book. The reason Model UN came up was because Joe, unfortunately, he fell ill last year and he's still recovering and wasn't really, we were in the middle of working on Dead Air. So I had this time to do something different. And neither he nor I knew really anyone who worked in like a black and white manga style, which is what I was thinking of doing for Model UN. So to find an artist in that sense to be partnered with, I eventually went into Facebook because there's a bunch of groups that will pair writers and artists. And it's a good way to look at a lot of portfolios at once, although it's also a great way to be inundated by messages from bots and companies that are pretending that they aren't bots.
Right.
Like, it's tough to, like, that was the hardest aspect of it, is like filtering through, because they don't read what you're looking for. They just see like, oh, someone wants to hire someone for a project, and then a million messages from every different art style you can imagine. So you have to filter through that. And I ended up finding this work from an artist named Ai Santiana Hernandez. He's in Argentina, and it was a amazing combination of like very clean sci-fi backgrounds and cool spaceships, but also like characters whose faces were extremely expressive. Like you could look at the panel and tell what they were thinking, what they were feeling, and that was a rare combination, especially after I'd like walked through this knee deep, just basically septic tank of like people and bots desperate for work, so that's how I ended up hooking up with him. And it was also unique for me because all of our collaboration was online versus knowing Joe and Angela and working with them in person, video calls, phone calls, and stuff. With IE, it's all emails, and that's it's worked really well. And he's very good at it in the sense that he provides a lot of, I would say, alternate takes on pages. Like I would get multiple versions of a page, then we would discuss what worked best, what didn't work, how we could hone it. And that was just kind of the energy he brought to the project. So that was a fun thing to work with.
That seems like an awesome way to collab with yet multiple options and, kind of go with it from there. That's and hone it in, like you said. That's pretty cool.
I hadn't asked him for that either. Like it was just something he started doing during the layout page. He'd be like, the layout phase, sorry. He would be like, oh, I thought maybe we add a joke here, or like maybe move this panel or add some more motion to this panel. But he would also be respectful of what was originally on the page. So he would include like those versions on top of what he thought I originally wanted.
Right.
And then we would make something good out of all that stuff
And
together.
it makes the book much better, like, because they're contributing in that way. I have that same
Yeah.
interaction with my artist, because I wrote a comic for the podcast, and we're, kind of based off, like, our mascot, Panel Pete.
We are beyond excited to share the Chronicles of Panel Pete, a brand new comic coming in early 2026. Written by Talking Comics podcast host AJ Ryman and co-written and illustrated by Mike L. Jure, Torque Arts Comics. Panel Pete is a heartfelt comic about courage, imagination, and the hero within. Sure, he may stir up a little mischief, but at the end of the day, he's the hero we all need. Expect variant covers, exclusive merch, and much more. Follow the links in our bio, hit that notify me on launch on Kickstarter, and join us on this adventure.
And when I wrote the script and I hired an artist that, gave it to him, like he'll send me pages back, but he'll add words here and there, or the expression of the faces, like you said. And it's been an amazing journey. We're halfway done with the book. I got page, the halfway point today. So that was pretty awesome.
Awesome. Congratulations.
Thank you. It is, I was very inspired, doing all these interviews with creators, and it's like, I want to learn this process, and what better way to learn than to just do it and
Yeah,
see
for
what
sure.
happens. So,
For sure.
going off everybody else in the community, and from, tips on writing, tips on, script and layouts and outlines and everything, I just kind of just meshed it all together and did it. It was pretty cool. Oh, real quick, you'd mentioned a few minutes ago about, you basically went to like making comic college, with your first artist. Like, what was like the number one tip you got out of that you'd share?
I mean, the number one tip is learning to trust your artist with the visual aspects of your story, because you might have a vision for how the page is going to look, and it could be a good vision, and it's certainly helpful to have that. But honestly, the artist is the visual powerhouse of your team. And if you become restrictive as a writer in terms of how you describe a page layout, how you describe even like a panel, what's happening in a panel, you can put the artist in a box where they might not feel comfortable bringing their own vision to it, which could and likely is better.
Right.
And working on the first issue with Joe of Code 45, it was like him saying, like, you can trust me to like come up with what needs to be here. You don't have to be this verbose. You don't have to go into this much detail. And that's very freeing, because like, unless I have an extremely strong opinion about how a panel should look, I'm going to describe what's happening in it. And then the artist is going to create that action. They're going to
Right.
they're also going to know where characters should be placed. They're also going to know how characters should be placed so that dialogue fits into the panel, right? Because like, these are all things you got to consider as a writer, when you're creating something. So that would be my number one tip. It's like being comfortable with that. Like it might feel like letting go, but in reality, you're playing to the strengths, and your strength is story. But I mean, the visual aspects of the story are just as important. So you have to allow space in the script for that to breathe.
100% agree. That's been one of the coolest things ever is just when I wrote the script, I was very loose in that. I'd give like the time of day or, like the location. But other than that, like he was free to do whatever he interpreted that writing to be. And it's been amazing getting those pages back and seeing like something that I wrote now as the, art. It's amazing. I
Yeah, it's
love it.
like the best thing to get in your inbox, right? Like
Right?
it used to just exist only in your brain, and now it exists in the world, and
In
that's
the
crazy.
world. It's
It's yeah.
I can't wait till it's done. It'll be a few more months, but I'm so excited for it to actually get a copy of it in my hands. It'll be so cool. Um, what is the most challenging aspect of writing for yourself, like comic books?
I mean, fiction's really tough. It's just like usually when I start a book, I know what the last page is going to look like, and so I'm often and sometimes the first page too. And the goal then becomes getting the characters that I have in my head from from that starting point to that end point. Like, what's the journey going to be like? And trying to keep that journey as interesting as possible for the audience, without going down too many, rabbit holes and whatnot, and making the characters feel real and human. I would say that's the biggest challenge is actually the story itself. Like once I have that, I can do the writing, but like sometimes it's not always obvious. And like I think that there are some people who will outline a story from beginning to end completely, like a full arc, and stick to that rigidly. And I like to outline the arc. Like I said, I have the ending, but there's a good chance things are going to change, and a lot of the time that change will come from collaborating with your creative partners because they might have suggestions or they might introduce something in the art or the design of the book that moves things in a direction you maybe hadn't considered, or you are interacting with an editor, um, in this case for Model UN Kevin Bircher, who is able to pick out things from the story that don't need to be there and that are really kind of catching you up or slowing down the energy of the story, or just distractions from what is actually most important for the reader. So that kind of stuff, it can all come together and change what the story will be. And you have to be open to that. I mean, you got to keep your vision, but at the same time, like there's many ways to get to the same destination.
What point is your editor interjecting into that? Like, do you write the full script and give it to the editor or then give it
Yeah,
to
I'll do an issue script.
Okay.
And before an artist sees it, that will go to the editor because I don't want to waste an artist's time if there's pages that need to go and whatnot. It's also like it could be possible that the editor asks you to change something that requires you to go back even earlier in the story and change something there for it to make sense. And it's way better to do that when you don't have art on the page for that,
Right,
you
right,
know?
right, for
So
sure.
yeah, at a certain point, you got to lock it down. At a certain point, you have to realize, and as a writer, this is interesting to say, even up until the lettering process, that's, I think, when things are truly locked down. That's when, like, after I see a page, I might change what people are saying on that page based on how it looks or like the energy of the page, or I might move like dialogue from one panel to the next if there's space, because sometimes you can come up with a really cool panel design and it no longer really accommodates the amount of text that you thought would be in there, and you'd be surprised how often you can just get rid of that dialogue. Maybe it doesn't need to be there. Maybe that's another part of trusting your artist. Like there's things you can fall into the trap of a writer of having characters describe something that's already happening in the panel, or referencing action that's already taking place. You're not writing prose. That doesn't need to be there. You don't need to narrate everything that's going on. So occasionally I'll catch that once it's on the page, take it out. And then things are just cleaner. And even once the pages have been lettered, that's the final pass I do where I go through and I look for, phrasing that's awkward, or sometimes something that sounded good in your head. It doesn't look right on the page coming out of the mouth of whoever's saying it. And that's the end of it. That's like the final pass for me, because lettering is much easier to redo than anything else for the most part. As long as you're not getting crazy with moving things around,
Right,
it's a
making the
more mobile
bubbles
aspect
bigger.
to. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. It's a more malleable part of the process. It's not as labor intensive as like the inks or the pencils.
Coolest. Yeah, we've only changed, I think, 2 pages, like 1 word on 2 different pages, and it just was from, like, variance to indie was the only thing we changed, but it made the whole story and the backstory so much greater. Because I had an idea for, like, the backstory of the like, an origin story, and we got to a page, and he sent it, and I'm like we kinda hit a fork in the road, like, "Well, what do you wanna do here?" And I was like, "Well, I've had this idea for the backstory, so let's flesh that out a little bit more." So we kinda did that together, and it helped make decisions for this book. So it was actually pretty cool, and changing the wording and stuff just really helped. But I love the collaboration part of it. So you're on Kickstarter? When does your Kickstarter go?
We have about 9 days left
9 days
as of this
left.
recording.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. So it'll be about 7 days left because I think I'm gonna have this out, well, maybe 6 days on Thursday.
Okay.
So go I'll put the link in the bio. Go
Yeah.
now.
It's
Back it.
modeluncomic.com.
Yep. So tell
That'll
us
take you
about
right to it.
that. Tell us all about it.
So it's a book about a model UN a model UN club at a high school in the 90s where aliens arrive on Earth and mistake that club for the actual United Nations. And then these kids can't convince the aliens that they're wrong because the leader of the aliens is pig-headed and done the research and doesn't want to admit that maybe they made a mistake. And they're like, no, we're definitely negotiating with these kids. And the kids essentially have the fate of the planet in their hands over the course of a weekend, and they're forced in this situation that they're not at all prepared for. So it's sci-fi, it's comedy, and I think it's fun when you take these two like rigid hierarchies. You have like a model UN club, which is kind of a hierarchy within a hierarchy because you have all these kids pretending to be different countries and they're inside the United Nations, but they're also inside this private school, which has its own hierarchy. And then you have these aliens who show up with their rigid society, and then you smash these two things together and sparks fly, and that can be really funny. So that was my goal with the story.
That's awesome. What's it like navigating Kickstarter?
Well, I mean, this is my fifth or sixth campaign.
Okay.
Um, Historically we've done really well and had great support, like usually like 400 supporters, raised a significant amount of money for the projects in the past. This book is very, very different in a bunch of ways. The first is it's digital only because up here in Canada, most of my audience is in the US and I can't mail anything across the border right now because of tariffs.
Right.
So I didn't want anyone getting stuck with a crazy customs bill because when you print a book, you don't control when it comes out, you don't control the schedule of the printer and all that stuff. So it's anywhere within like 2 or 3 months from the end of the campaign. And the situation with tariffs is so fluid. There's just no way to know what that's going to be. So I decided to go digital only, which radically changes all the rewards I can offer.
Right.
I can't put up original art anymore. I can't do art prints. I can't do like 3D printed little dudes from the comic book, which I've done in the past. And the other thing that made it very different is this is a black and white manga style book, which I've never done. So most of the people who've supported me in the past are used to like full color Western style books. And there's just not necessarily a lot of audience crossover. In a lot of ways, I feel like I'm starting from zero. So the campaign has been much more modest with a much more modest goal. And I'm honestly just looking to establish a foundation for finishing up the book. I'm doing it in two parts. This is the first part. It's about 54 pages. I think it's going to be around 120 pages in total. So when the second part of the book comes out, hopefully in the spring, that's what I'm planning. I'll have a foundation to build on instead of starting from zero.
Right.
And we'll see from there. But it's fun to do new things as a creator, to try different stuff, to take risks. I mean, you don't grow if you don't do that. Um, and this is something I really wanted to do, and it really felt like the manga structure was the best fit for this story.
That's pretty cool. Is there no way to get like a US printer or
The problem when you start doing that is the US dollar is worth about 30% more than the Canadian dollar.
right?
And Kickstarter will not let me charge anyone except in Canadian dollars. So
Gotcha.
you end up starting from like a real disadvantage. The other thing too is most comic book printing in North America is done in Quebec. There are a ton of printers up here, and the pricing is very good.
Right.
So add that on to the additional cost of the US dollar, and it starts to get complicated very quickly. And then the other third thing is if it's printed in the States, I'm also paying someone to do fulfillment. So like you add a lot of costs if you're going to do that. I'm not saying it's impossible. And maybe if things
For yeah,
don't,
the first one, maybe not, right?
yeah, I mean, if things don't change, I might have to do that. I might not have a choice, right? And it's certainly had offers from people in the business who have said, look, I have contacts at this and such organization that will let you do fulfillment. So it's an option that's out there, but like, on the first book, establishing things, it didn't make sense to do it then.
You could also maybe when book 2 comes out, go back and print a book 1 too later on.
Maybe, I
So,
mean, I think, doing a compiled version would probably make the most sense further
right.
down the road, like a trade version of it. Yeah.
That's pretty cool. So what advice would you give people navigating the Kickstarter role
Um,
world?
the most important thing is that people know your book exists. They can't support a book if they don't know it's out there. And it's really hard right now to do that. If you're relying on things like social media, I don't think advertising or posting on Facebook, Instagram, Blue Sky, whatever is effective anymore. I think it's just too atomized. There's too many different services, and the attention of comic book readers really isn't focused on any one of them. So what's worked really well for me in the past is a mailing list, an email list. And that really started with the first campaign where after people had supported us, we're like, hey, can we have your email address and we'll let you know when something new comes along. But you can build an email list in other ways too. You can offer, say, a 10-page sample of your book or a 5-page sample of your book and be like, hey, if you sign up for the email list, just put your email in and I'll email you a link and you can read the book. And then if you don't like it, just unsubscribe. That's a helpful thing as well. But I really do think that email is an effective way of reaching out to people, because it's when you advertise on social media, you don't know who's seeing it. But when you send a message to someone on your email list, they've already expressed an interest in your work and they're warm. They're open to the idea of like seeing something different or seeing something new from you. And that's incredibly valuable. And it's something you
Agreed.
can't abuse either. You got to be careful with it. You want to send people stuff. I have a newsletter that comes out once a month and I try to be interesting, try to talk about stuff that I think readers would want to hear about. And you earn the trust of people that way.
So this is a crazy question because I'm in the middle of this right now for
Okay.
myself. A couple weeks ago, I started this, okay, I need to have an email list and, because we're, similar, everybody agrees that, email list is the way to go. What do you use, first off, what do you recommend people using to gather those emails and send those emails?
I'm using a service called Email Octopus, which
Okay.
is free for the level that I'm using it, and pretty simple to use. Before that, I was using MailChimp, but MailChimp
Okay.
got very
They
expensive
have
very
gotten
quickly.
very expensive. I
Yeah,
used MailChimp years ago. I went back to look at MailChimp and I was like, who are these people?
yeah. I don't know who's affording that service these
Yeah.
days. It seems like they've really pushed in a corporate direction.
100%.
Yeah, Email Octopus, simple, easy to use. They have paid tiers, but I don't need them.
Yeah, right.
It's mostly if you want to do like really intense tracking and analysis of your traffic and whatnot. But they offer also, I think if you pay, you can look back on campaigns indefinitely. For the free version, you can only look at your data from like I think 30 to 60 days. So
Gotcha.
I mean that's useful for some people. But that's what I've been doing with it.
So my next question is, so nobody knows our book exists, right? So you got to market your book. So you got to get an email list. How do you market the free 5-page sample to
It's
get people
tough.
to sign up?
It's
It
tough.
almost feels like it's the same problem.
It's a chicken and the egg thing. So for what happened for me was our first Kickstarter campaign was in 2020. It was actually in March 2020. It was actually 2 weeks before COVID happened. So like we ended up with I think 250 supporters, and then the last 2 weeks of the campaign were a ghost town because the world was collapsing. But
Right.
we didn't know anything about email lists at that time. So we started our email list with the people of that 250 supporters who were willing to, when we sent out Kickstarter surveys, willing to offer us their email address. Before that, this was back in a different era where Facebook was still viable.
Right.
I used Facebook ads targeted at people who were interested in the specific type of comic I was making, to send them to a Facebook page for that comic book. And then we grew that community to about 5,000 people. And then I used that community to target ads to, like, letting them know when the book was out. So like these people are already interested in Code 45. And then you change your ad audience to be like, all these people who are interested in Code 45, well, it exists now. And let's send them to the Kickstarter. And then I was like, well, if you want to be on the mailing list, I'm going to send ads for you to do that as well. I don't think that's as viable anymore because I still have that Facebook group, but getting to access the people in it is incredibly expensive if you
Yes.
use Facebook's advertising. So like the way that we did it is not necessarily as accessible as it is now.
Today, right?
So like you could just go for a Kickstarter and like view it as a sacrifice in some ways, and like, okay, I'm not going to have the full list that I would have, but I'm on the Kickstarter platform. People are going to see it. They're going to have eyeballs on it, and I can build my list from there. You could also go to comic book shops, table there. You could try local conventions. I'm not a big convention guy, but it does work to have like a sign up sheet at your table. You will get people who are interested. But if you do have local community for comics, I would start there. I would like go out and meet people where they are and be like, "Hey, I have a comic book coming out. Are you interested in it?" Um, it it helped too that our comic books were, either focused on like the rave scene or different types of college radio. So like you have a different point of interest that you can pull people in. It's not just the fact that it's a comic, but it's a comic about something that maybe they have a personal history with. So you can try and tie your comic to parts of the story that you think will resonate with people who would be interested as readers, and then go to where they are as well and talk to them there.
That's
That
great
would be some
advice.
advice.
Yeah, I mean that's great. Why not? Why do you not like conventions? Any particular reason?
It's not that I don't like them. It's more like I didn't really grow up going to them, I guess. So I'm
Gotcha.
not into the culture. And there are a couple in Quebec, but like compared to the US, the population is so much smaller. And as a Canadian, I can't cross the border and sell stuff. You just can't do it. So
I had no idea.
it's not legal. Yeah. You you would have to have a visa to do that, to operate in the United States. So like if I was to go to a large American con, what am I doing there?
Right. You're
Like
not selling, I guess.
no, you're not selling, and any type of work in the US is like difficult if you're not a citizen. Like
But
I'm
you can sell like anybody around the world can join your Kickstarter and buy into your
exactly.
Kickstarter
Yeah.
because
Yeah. It's just like you can't bring materials across the border and
gotcha.
then sell those materials when you're there. Yeah.
Makes sense. Yeah, I gotcha. That all right. So note to self when I don't go into Canada to sell my
Well, in
comic book.
Canada it's different.
Is it?
Yeah. So
Okay.
there's different laws. Different countries have different laws and permits. Like some countries will offer you like a temporary entrance for like however long you're going to be there. Canada has a lot of visas that are related to the arts. So like let's say you're a band and you're touring Canada, you can get exemptions for like work permits and stuff because you're going to perform at a venue. You're not necessarily, taking a job because there's not another band
Right.
that is you that could do that job, right? So like
Right.
different countries have different exemptions for that kind of thing. I used to work in music promotion, so like we had to deal with that a lot at the border.
I was in Canada a couple months ago on a
Okay,
train. I was
whereabouts?
uh I was in Alaska. I was like in Skagway,
Okay, yeah,
Alaska, and then
yeah.
it took a train up and it crossed the Canadian border and then back.
Skagway's just across the river from the Yukon, right?
Yeah. Yep,
Yeah,
yep.
I've been up there. Yeah,
It was beautiful, beautiful.
it's amazing.
I next summer though, I wanted to go back to Canada, so we'll see. More
Okay,
at your side of Canada, not the West Coast
the
side.
warmer side.
The warmer, yeah, more populated side. Well, so let's go into like the inspiration behind your comic book. Where did you get that inspiration?
Uh I don't know where the term Model UN came from. The words just like ended up in my head for like a couple of months. It was kicking around, and I thought maybe I would do like a slice of life book about it. Kind of like Freaks and Geeks, the TV show, except the social focus would be this Model UN club that a bunch of weirdos were in. But then I realized that like if I was going to do a manga about high school, there were 10,000 Japanese mangas about high school that were already like doing slice of life better than I could ever do. So I needed some kind of hook that was outside of that. And I love sci-fi. So I thought, okay, what if aliens showed up and made it weird? And when you do that kind of thing in a story, when you have like an outside stressor that can shake a box and you have interesting characters in that box, you can have fun with that. It can make things, you know, unpredictable, and you can have really cool character interactions. And there's not much bigger stressor than an alien invasion. So I figured that that would be a fun thing. Well, fun for me as a writer, less fun for the kids who are involved to to deal with.
What up? That's that's great. What do you want readers to feel when they read your book?
Oh, I just want them to feel like they need to know how it ends.
I love
That's what
that.
I think I would want. Yeah, they want to
So you
complete the
leave them on
story.
a cliffhanger.
Yeah, I want them to feel like, well, I need more of this.
I need
Like
more
I
of
need,
this. Sign
yeah.
up for the email list.
There you go. I should have it in the back of the book,
In the
right? Yeah.
back of the book. Sign up for. I'm
There's
adding
another.
it to the back of my book.
There's another one.
I love that. Add email to back of the book. Oh man. What what if you could give like what's something you wish you knew when you started that you know now, like that would have made life easier? Like what's that one piece of advice you'd give somebody starting out today as a creator?
I mean, the one piece of advice I would give starting out today versus the one piece of advice that would make things easier, I think are different things.
Okay.
Um,
Let's go over both.
I think the one piece of advice it would be is like if you want to make a comic, you should do it, and you should not wait for people to tell you or give you permission. You should not like think that you need to achieve some kind of thing before you start doing it. That you need to be the world's best artist or like be the world's best storyteller. Everybody starts somewhere. And unless they don't, unless you never start, in which case your comic never exists. And like that's sad. So don't be sad,
Got it.
just like get it out there and get it done. And like first comics are first comics for a reason. There'll be another one if it doesn't work out how you thought it was going to do, how it was going to, you'll be just as excited on your next comic and you'll have learned all the things about storytelling that you wanted to learn and apply them there. Like it's a like I said earlier, writing is a muscle and like you do it more and more and the more reps you get, the more comfortable you are with it. Um in terms of starting out with comics, what would have made it easier? Comics are really expensive. I think you got to plan. Like, if you're a writer who doesn't do their own art, you need to really account for what comics are going to cost you. The cost of hiring an artist who's talented, the cost of hiring an editor, hiring a designer, printing the books, and mailing everything out. It's not insurmountable, and crowdfunding really makes it possible. But you need to be aware that these costs are out there so you don't get surprised by them. That's there's stuff that can add up quickly if you don't think things through necessarily. So I would make sure you plan a reasonable scope for your book. It can be, I mean, the stories that I want to tell, they're fairly long, like 120 pages, maybe, but you don't have to put them all out there at one time. You can do an issue that's 22 pages and do 5 of them. And that's
Right.
a lot easier to build your audience. Like we were talking about newsletter stuff. Obviously, if you do 5 different campaigns and you get 5 different groups of people, well, no, they're not all going to be different, but you're going to be picking up new readers as you go on. You can build on that, create a foundation, build on the foundation, and then keep adding to that. That's a much more sustainable way to sell 120 pages of comics than it is to just pop the 120 pages on the market. No one knows who you are. No one understands what your story is necessarily. They haven't heard of it. There's no word of mouth. You have no track record on Kickstarter either, because some people might look at that and say, brand new creator, kind of a long book. It's ambitious. I don't know if they can pull it off. And they might be nervous and stay away. But if you can prove to people, hey, I did a 22-page book, I printed it, I mailed it, everybody got it, you can trust me, that's a very different
Very
proposition.
different story.
Yeah.
That's one thing I'm doing is I'm not I have the pre-launch page up on Kickstarter and I have a very modest goal like $500
Okay.
just throw it out there, right? But I'm printing my book regardless and I'm going to have it
Yeah.
printed in my hand before I even hit the launch button, right? On Kickstarter. So that was one thing I wanted to make sure I had a finished product in my hand.
That's what I did with Model UN, is complete and ready to go. As soon as the Kickstarter's over and Kickstarter puts those funds in our account, I push send, a digital copy goes out to everybody. I feel very much the same way.
That's awesome. So it's complete, 100% complete.
Yep.
You said it was like 120 pages?
Well, it's this first half is 54 pages.
Okay, so
Yeah.
first half. Okay,
Yeah.
gotcha. So where, other than Kickstarter, where are your books available? Your older books?
So we had Code 45 was published through Scout and through Simon and Schuster for a long time. But
Awesome.
Scout is not a great company, and we had a lot of trouble with them, and we're no longer published through them. So as a warning to anyone who's out there, don't publish with Scout Comics. Simon and
Okay.
Schuster were good to us though. Uh, Currently, the books are available. If you go to code-45comic.com or deadaircomic.com or my website, benjaminhunting.com, the comics are all there. You can buy digital versions. I'm not shipping anything physical right now because of what we were talking about earlier. I don't want to let anybody down just because of where they live. So it's all digital right now. You can get the full Code 45 graphic novel, and the first 2 issues of Dead Air, which are complete, are available there.
Do you plan on continuing both of those, or?
Code 45 is done. It's a complete
Okay.
story. Dead Air, yes, I plan to complete it. The third issue is ready to go. Just waiting for when the art's gonna start up again.
Okay. Perfect. Any idea when that'll happen?
Absolutely not. Probably after Model UN. I want to, the people who are supporting me right now. I want to bring this book to completion for them. That sounded
Right.
dirtier than I intended it to. I want to bring the full story to them so they can enjoy it and hopefully have that done by the spring. And
Awesome.
then we'll see if a print version comes out after that. If I can get back on setting up physical copies.
Awesome. So I have my fun questions too, but before we get
Okay.
into that, as promised, I do this, do this with everybody. Is there anything we need to cover that I didn't ask about? Anything you want to cover?
Not really. I mean, modeluncomic.com, it's aliens, it's high school, it's 90s, it's manga, it's funny. And I think you'll have a good time. It's also very, very affordable because it's digital only. You got
Right.
nothing to lose.
Yeah. Go to the Kickstarter, back it now. So that'll be, are you going to accept late pledges? I
Yeah,
saw
for a
that as
little
an
while.
option.
Yeah,
Okay,
this
cool.
is my first time. The last Kickstarter I ran was in May of 2024. So
Okay.
this is my first time with late pledges. So I'm curious to see how that works out.
Yeah, me too. I was curious how that was going to work. Like, why not have late pledges
Yeah.
if I'm already going to have the book in hand, right?
It
When
basically
I
turns it
start,
into a store, right? There were some
right?
other crowdfunding platforms that were doing something similar. So I think Kickstarter wanted to get in on that.
Makes sense. And they're going to push it, hopefully. So, all right. So here's some fun questions. And we might have already answered this in the intro, but who was your first favorite superhero or comic character?
Comic character favorite? I don't know. Maybe like Linus from Peanuts or Calvin from Calvin and Hobbes, I would say.
I love how, you know, the Sunday morning here, Saturday morning for you, right?
Yeah,
So you got him a day before us? Is that what
I
you're
know.
telling me? You got probably the same comic a day before.
And it was like the 80s and the 90s, right? So like I couldn't put it online and spoil it.
Right. You couldn't spoil it. Man, imagine having a friend in the long distance cross border
They'd have to
phone
read it. They'd
call,
have to read it over the phone, right? Like
right? But imagine
describe
the
the
phone
panel.
bill back then.
Yep.
If that happened, geez, man, I love the fact that those still come up to this day, though.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Do you remember the first actual comic book you ever read? I think you mentioned this earlier.
Actual comic book would probably be so. It's a weird question. Not a weird question, sorry. It's a weird answer because my dad had a couple of compilations. He had a Batman compilation that was like, I want to say maybe 10 different issues or storylines across 40 years of Batman, but like real old stuff, starting like
Wow.
definitely in the 40s. Was probably the first story in there. So I had read that as a kid, and he also had a great big. Actually, this is making me think of a couple other things. There were these 2 or 3 anthologies of comics, hardcover well, I think they were all hardcover anthologies. One was Dick Tracy, which isn't really a comic book, it's a strip, right? That was a newspaper strip. So, but there were also a Donald Duck and a Mickey Mouse from like, again, I want to say the 40s, but like oversized hardcover compilations that were just around my house when I was young. And I remember reading those like many, many, many times. But I don't know if those were comic books that were compiled or if it was strips. Like, I
I
have
don't
no
know.
idea.
Probably strip. I don't know. No idea. I was a big Dick Tracy fan. Still
Yeah.
am. So I read the current Dick Tracy. It's pretty
Nice.
good. Do you have a favorite current series?
Series. I was reading what's the book called? James Tinian. He's like a comic, kind of a horror guy. He had a series about the nice house on the lake that I was reading, and that's kind of done now. But he also has a series about conspiracies in global culture and how like they gain power if people believe in them. And I can't remember the name. I don't know why I'm blanking on the name, but the book is focused on a part of the government that is there to control these conspiracies by like making sure that people don't believe too much in like Sasquatch or like the JFK conspiracy, because otherwise it changes reality. I was into that for a while. It got really weird, and I had to take a bit of a break. But yeah, I can't really think of a series that I'm following too much right now.
Okay.
Mostly like individual,
One shot type
one
stuff?
shot stuff like trade paperbacks.
Okay. What's your favorite
Um,
one shot right now?
Alison Bechdel's latest book that just came out called Spent is really cool. It's like sort of meta, where it's sort of about her, but it's sort of also about her characters from a strip she had back in the late '80s called Dykes to Watch Out For. And it's like hard to tell like what's her and what's those characters who are taken in. They're living now, like it's like their lives as they live in Vermont, and it's like they've all grown older, and it's like, do they still believe the things they believed back then? And she's a comic book creator in the book, and she's being tempted by like an Amazon series and all this stuff, and it's like, what do I believe in as my ethics of like as a creator? Like, do I take this money and just like shut up and like live quietly out here in Vermont, or do I stand up for some principles that I had when I was 20 years old and starting these comics? And it's like her partner is like completely business oriented and is like, I'm not going to get involved, like, you do what you want to do, it's fine, like I don't think there's anything wrong either way. So it's like, these like ethical questions you have with yourself that like maybe are only intense to you. Like the rest of the world doesn't care what you decide.
Right.
So I thought it was really good. It was an interesting turn for her, because she hadn't gone back to those characters in like, I want to say 30 years almost. And it was really fun to come back to that.
That
That
is
came
pretty
out, I
neat.
think, like maybe like in the spring. I really enjoyed that.
Okay. That's pretty neat.
Yeah.
What was it called? What was the title?
I believe it's called Spent with a dollar sign, because like the big focus on like her finances and whatnot. Yeah.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
All right. If you could live in any comic book universe, which one would it be?
Man. Probably the Star Trek one, because I'm a big Trekkie.
That's a great answer. Like, I want a holodeck so bad. Like, that seems like so much fun. You can do anything in there. If you could have any superpower, what would you choose?
Speak and understand any language.
I like that. Speak any language and understand it. Which comic book character would you want as your personal sidekick? Could be any character.
Blade, but not from the books, from the movies.
The Wesley Snipes Blade?
Can you imagine if Wesley Snipes first of all, if Wesley Snipes was your best friend?
Right.
Second, he's also a vampire.
Right. Yeah, that would be all right. I'm down. White man can't jump, but I damn sure's try. That was a great. Yeah, Wesley Snipes, great.
Think of the stories alone. Just the stories
Right?
Wesley Snipes could tell you. Like, endlessly entertaining.
Demolition Man stories. Oh man,
Everything.
that'd be great. All right, this is the last one. If your life were a comic book, what would the title be?
Don't tell me how it ends.
Like that. Don't tell me how it ends. All right, what's your favorite? All right, I lied. Not the last one. Only because it's the last one on my paper. Okay, but I thought of another question because you said it a minute ago. Favorite Star Trek series?
The original series, but the movies.
Okay, the movies.
Yeah.
4 was my absolute favorite movie growing up.
4's great. I love 2 and 6. 4's really good too, though.
Like my favorite, the line from that movie I use every day of my life. It's the hello computer. Hello computer.
Computer.
Hello computer.
And he's like,
what are you
how
doing?
quaint, like it's on the keyboard. Yep. Transparent aluminum.
That's my favorite ever. Hello, computer. I use that line literally every day. If there's a day that I don't, I'd be shocked.
It's timeless.
But all right, awesome. So I know we already said it, but say it again. Tell people where to find your work.
ModelUNcomic.com for the Kickstarter, and my past comics at BenjaminHunting.com.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for joining. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. This is a lot of fun.
Yeah, this was awesome. Go to the Kickstarter, like, subscribe, follow. I'll have all the links in the descriptions. And
make sure to hit me up when your book's on Kickstarter so I can check it out.
I will, for sure. I'll send you the link to sign up for my newsletter. How about that?
There we go. Perfect. Perfect.
In a world of heroes, villains, and epic stories,
Braha, Anakan, and their ultimate sidekick, Panel Pete, take you on adventures each week.
showing off their comic book hauls,
Fun trivia and games, honest reviews.
and inspiring conversations with creators and consumers who make it all possible.
Join in on the conversation.
This is Talking Comics.
Trying to start a podcast but feeling stuck? At Aquadio, we help creators make waves with everything you need to bring your voice to life. Hosting, recording, editing, and marketing. Whether you're starting from scratch or just need a little help polishing your sound, we're here to hydropower your creativity. Comment on this video or DM us today and let's dive in.